Hey there, this is part 2 of making the final lizard. If you haven't seen part 1, make sure you go back and watch that one first. But before we get into the video, it's time to announce the name of this lizard. Introducing Farron the Frilled Lizard. This name suggestion came from Bubbles. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone who entered a name. Now let's get on with making Farron. Now, one important step I forgot to mention in the last episode is how you need to weigh your yarn before you start so that you can calculate the final yardage at the end. Providing the exact yardage or weight of the yarn and colors used in your pattern is vital because it tells crocheters how much yarn they'll need to complete the project. Here's how I calculate yardage. First, you're going to look at your yarn label and then divide the yards by the grams. For Wool of the Andes worsted, it's 110 yards divided by 50 grams. This equals 2.2 yards per gram. We'll use that number later. Next, you're going to weigh the skein that you're starting with, as you can see I'm doing in the video, and you'll write down that number. It's important even when you're starting with a new skein because sometimes they'll be a little under or overweight. So once you have the initial weight of your skein, you want to write that number down. Then after you've made your project and used up all of what you're going to need for that particular color, you're going to grab your food scale again, then weigh what's left. Using my orange skein as an example, I started out with 89 grams. The leftover weight was 55, so we're going to subtract 55 from 89, and that'll give you 34 grams. Now we're going to multiply 34 by the yards per gram, which was 2.2, and that gives you 74.8 yards of the orange that I used. Now that all the math stuff is out of the way, let's finish making Farron and start writing up the pattern. Depending on the project, the way I go about this step varies, but in this case, I'm typing up the pattern instructions and taking more photos while I crochet. I decided to go for a simple tube shape for the body and the tail with minimal shaping so that the wire inside could be responsible for posing. I'll show you more about that later. But remember back in episode 1 when we first sketched this idea, I wanted the tail to transition into a dark green. And I'll be honest, there's really no grand reason for this. I just wanted to break up the orange and the yellow color scheme a little bit. So in order to get an interesting transition, I used one of my favorite color change methods, which involves alternating colors for several rows before switching fully to the new color. If you'd like a full tutorial on this, I have a video on the channel and a whole blog post about it, both of which will be linked in the description box below. One little pro tip that I'll share for picking good color transition matches is to focus on the colors with the same value. Value refers to a color's lightness or darkness, and the easiest way to test this is to grab your colors that you're thinking about using, take a photo of them side by side, and then using your phone or photo editor app, turn the saturation all the way down or show the photo only in grayscale. And without the color being distracting, you can see the lighter green looks nearly identical to the orange of the body. Since the colors are the same value, the transition won't be as visually harsh. Now that I've picked the colors, I do know that working around wire is a bit of a pain, and when you add in so many color transitions, it just makes things a little bit harder. And I know not everyone will want to do all of that, so I'll add in notes to the pattern for not only solid color instructions, but also notes for completing the pattern without wire. The end result will be a little bit different from mine because it won't be posable, but ultimately I want people to enjoy making the pattern and do whichever version they're comfortable with. That leads me into the actual pattern writing portion of this process. Now, if you've never written a pattern before, just know that the first one is always the hardest and the process gets easier from there. Honestly, there are entire courses dedicated to pattern writing, and I don't want this video to be too terribly long, so I'll just go over the main points. First, you need to decide what program you want to write your patterns in. I personally use Google Docs because I'm already super familiar with Microsoft Word, but you can also use Canva, Procreate, or even Photoshop if you're more graphically tech savvy. Mostly, you need to be able to export your final document as a PDF file. After picking a program, I recommend creating a simple pattern template that you can copy and then work each new pattern from. This will help keep your formatting and language consistent. So here's a very basic look at one of mine. You'll just need a title page. I put an image and my copyright notice on mine. Then your next page needs to include project materials, stitch abbreviations, and any other project notes that you have. With your abbreviations, make sure you refer to the Craft Yarn Council for official stitch abbreviations. Sometimes you will need to include special stitches. Just make sure you're very clear about what each abbreviation means. Then you have your project notes section, and this needs to include any and all pertinent information that someone needs to know about making your pattern. For instance, is it US terms or UK, special stitch notes, etc. Now, moving on to the actual pattern, you need some kind of header to mark the start of each piece. And just a note, I use a little bit of a silly font for my headers, but for the actual text of my pattern, I use a really clear, legible, standard font. Remember, you want people to be able to read your pattern easily. Finally, at the end, you should have a page or a section with contact info. Some pattern designers even include tester photos within their patterns. I don't personally do this, but it is a really cute addition that you can add. So here's a quick little look at what this pattern looks like in practice. And as of this recording, I'm still in the process of adding photos and tweaking some notes, but the pattern itself is mostly done. Now, if you're wondering how I edit my photos, I use Canva, and I actually have a blog post that goes more into detail about taking good photos. If you want to check that out, it is linked in the description box below. Now, I know that was a lot of information. If you have any questions about pattern writing or the design process, I'd love to hear them. Please share them in the comments below. Maybe I'll do a little Q&A for the next video. If you'd like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next video, where I'm going to be talking about the next step, testing and tech editing. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see y'all next time.